The end is here, but there is no prophecy. This is Sancticide. Set in a world consumed by the biblical apocalypse, Sancticide blends classical melee combat with roguelike progression. It's not a sprawling blockbuster, but what it lacks in scale, it makes up for in intensity. Every fight will demand precision, awareness, and mastery of your surroundings, and with an emphasis on the tactical melee combat, Sancticide is claiming to challenge you to fight not just with your weapon, but with the world around you. Is this the game to satisfy your craving for skill-based action? Let's take a look at what Sancticide brings to the battlefield. Now, before we dive into Sancticide, let's take a quick look at the team behind it. Red Square Games is a Polish indie studio founded in 2020 by a group of industry veterans and investors. While a relatively young company, their team brings experience from some of Poland's more well-known studios, including CD Projekt, CI Games, and Flying Wild Hog. Flying Wild Hog being known for their game Shadow Warrior Space Punks and things like Evil West. Now, their focus here is crafting unique indie games set in rich, immersive worlds. From cyberpunk-inspired action to biblical apocalyptic combat, Red Square Games aims to push the boundaries of the indie development, as most indie developing studios claim. But their ambitions don't stop at video games. They are also exploring board games and role-playing experiences to diversify their portfolios. With a growing portfolio and a strong creative vision, Red Square Games is making a name for itself, as was mentioned before, in both digital and analog gaming, and now their latest project, Sancticide, is aiming to take players into a brutal, melee-focused world of absolute biblical chaos. As for the backstory, you are basically in the end times, a world where the biblical apocalypse has come to life. In Sancticide, you step into the shoes of Ezekiel, a fresh recruit in the Sin Collector Corps, haunted by remorse and guilt. Ezekiel embarks on his most crucial mission yet, which is navigating a realm where death is not the end, but merely just another beginning. At its core, Sancticide offers a melee-focused third-person action experience infused with roguelike elements. The combat system emphasizes spatial and directional awareness, paying homage to classic titles while introducing modern mechanics. People can manipulate the environment and physically interact with it, expanding tactical possibilities. Now, the battlefield is going to be your ally, according to the studio, using the scorched remnants of the world to your advantage. You'll be able to slam enemies into hellish hazards, crush them with debris, and reshape the environments to survive. Wielding the divine power known as a purple, a supernatural force that allows kinetic manipulation of objects and enemies, you will be able to experiment with various skills, abilities, and weapon customizations to build a combat style that suits your playthrough. Beyond the main storyline, you will also be able to dive into side quests that kind of reveal the day-to-day life of a sin collector, your chosen profession, and explore an unforgiving world filled with agony, suffering, and struggle, yet discover glimmers of hope and humanity in the least expected places. You should be prepared to face the trials and tribulations of Ezekiel's most demanding assignment in Sancticide, which is the end. It's just the beginning. So, is Sancticide the game for you? Well, there's a lot to be intrigued by, but also some concerns that are really worth mentioning at this point. First of all, the combat. In my opinion, the melee focus system is extremely ambitious, but my early impressions suggest that it feels a little bit floaty. Attacks don't always land with impact, and parrying an enemy only for them to immediately start blocking can at times make encounters feel more frustrating rather than kind of fluid. Then there's stamina. Right now, it limits movement and attack freedom, and some players feel it might work better if it only is draining on blocking instead of missed attacks as well, and a more refined system could make combat feel more rewarding overall. Another sticking point for me is the controls. The current weapon wheel setup is a bit messy, forcing me to shift through guns, melee weapons, and powers in the middle of combat. A single hotkey system for switching between guns and melee, or between one-handed and two-handed weapons, could have cleaned up my concept of this game a little bit more significantly if I had them there to play with. The voice acting is another mixed bag in my opinion. Some of the enemy dialogues come off as flat, and even Ezekiel's performances feel a little off at times. A stronger delivery could help bring the game's dark, apocalyptic world to life, and probably some more money infused into the company to hire quite possibly more professional voice actors. I don't want to be that guy who says they are bad voice actors, but you could definitely get bigger names in the industry. But for all of its flaws, Sancticide has something special: its world. The concept of the Sin Collector corpse, the biblical apocalypse backdrop, and the roguelite progression are all intriguing. If the devs can kind of refine the rough edges here, Sancticide could carve out its place among the more unique action games of the year, especially for a small indie studio. And that leaves us all to the question of, should you be excited? Well, if you drowned in the dark and challenging melee actions of TTP action combats, there's a potential here for you, but it might need some fine-tuning before it truly shines. It's also worth mentioning here that there is the demo, and this is how I played it, and I don't ever find demos to be an accurate representation, especially when a game is starting to come out in early access. I do believe that there's a lot of ground for this game to grow. I do believe the studio has the qualified developers to kind of make this game work for the level and degree that the studio can probably afford to do. So I do think there is some positives here. However, it's going to be up to you more or less to jump in there, try that demo, and see if this game is something that might catch your fancy. And also keep in mind, as I said before, there could be quite a bit of improvements, but the more information that we get out on the internet about this game, the more that those devs are going to be able to start fine-tuning it more for a broader audience. Now, I don't believe this is going to be that next big action RPG Path of Exile 2 killer, but it's definitely a game that could take up a little bit of your time, and I believe it's worth trying to play. And this studio, for all of its shortcomings from what they've thrown into the demo, I believe has what it takes once again to really develop something that's pretty interesting and a little bit different, off the side of what we're used to playing more or less in these type of games. So let me know in the comments below if you're interested in this type of game, and always remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that I can keep you up to date on all of these great indie games